think there were not many people who understood just how broad his interests were and how supportive he was of an astonishingly wide range of organisations.
You told a reporter at around the time of your 70th birthday that actually if you weren't a princess of the United Kingdom, that actually you might well have been an engineer. Do you think you got that from your father?
I think that's probably true, because I think if anything broke, there was always a man, have a look at this, see if you could mend it. I mean, you didn't throw things away.
Princess Anne had barely finished the first sentence when the room fell completely silent. William stopped moving. Harry stared across the room as if he had suddenly heard something that was never meant to reach him. And Anne, standing with the composure that had become her trademark, held a private message connected to King Charles and refused to soften what came next. According to the dramatic account surrounding the alleged private meeting, Charles had summoned members of his family to Windsor, but he did not deliver the message himself. Instead, he placed the burden on Anne. The reason, according to the account, was simple but devastating. Charles's alleged final wish concerned both of his sons. For William, that was already difficult enough to hear. For Harry, it was something else entirely. After years of distance, public disagreements, and wounds that had never properly closed, the idea that their father had left behind one final request involving the two brothers forced an old conflict back into the room. But Anne had not called them together to discuss the past. She had come to reveal what Charles allegedly wanted to happen next. HI viewers, if this were your family and your parent left one final request asking two brothers to put their differences aside, would you give that request one last chance? Leave a simple yes or no in the comments, because sometimes silence allows family wounds to become permanent.
It's been in the back of my mind for quite a while, the whole climate change debate, environmental issues growing, pollution. So I've always felt very strongly about it, and I've been watching very carefully what others have been doing. And for me, over the last few years, the urgency and the positivity, particularly the positivity around the debate, has been missing. It's been very negative. Understandably, it's such a large issue that everyone feels completely overwhelmed by the facts, the scale of the problems, and things like that. So.
And looked toward William first. There was no ceremony, no carefully prepared royal announcement, no dramatic gesture. According to the account, there was simply an uncomfortable silence before Anne explained that Charles had spoken privately about something he wanted protected after him. Something he believed was too important to leave to palace advisors or public statements. William's expression reportedly changed when he realized the message was not about the ordinary business of the monarchy. It was personal. Harry had come into the room carrying his own history with the family. His relationship with William had deteriorated over years, and the distance between him and the institution had become impossible to ignore. Yet Anne's message suggested that Charles had never viewed the distance as the final chapter. Then came the first sentence that reportedly stunned both brothers. Charles's final wish, and allegedly explained, was not simply about the crown. It was not about wealth. It was not about titles. And it was not about deciding which son mattered more. It was about what would happen between them when Charles was no longer there to stand between them. That changed the atmosphere instantly. William had spent years preparing for the responsibilities that would eventually come with the crown. Harry had spent years building a life far away from the center of royal duty. They had taken very different roads, and neither road appeared likely to bring them back to the same place. Yet Charles's alleged request appeared to force both men toward the same question. Could they remain brothers even if they could never return to the relationship they once had? And did not answer that question for them. Instead, she continued. The account claims Charles had deliberately chosen Anne because she could deliver an uncomfortable truth without turning it into a performance. She was not William. She was not Harry. She was not a palace advisor trying to protect an institution. She was the sister of the king, and according to the story, she was one of the few people Charles trusted to carry a message this sensitive without changing its meaning. That trust suddenly made the room feel smaller.
So I come here today with the highest respect for the United States Congress, this citadel of democracy created to represent the voice of all American people, to advance sacred rights and freedoms. Speaking in this renowned chamber of debate and deliberation, I cannot help but think of my late mother, Queen Elizabeth, who in 1991...
William reportedly wanted to know why his father had not told him directly. Harry had his own question. Why had Charles waited until now? Neither question received an immediate answer. Anne allegedly knew that the first revelation would only create more questions. She had been asked to deliver the message, but the weight of what she carried went far beyond a single conversation. The alleged instruction appeared to touch the future of the monarchy while also reaching into the most painful part of the royal family's private life. And then Anne revealed something even more troubling. Charles had allegedly understood that William and Harry might never agree about what happened between them. He had understood the resentment. He had understood the mistrust. He had understood that neither brother could simply erase years of hurt because their father wanted peace. That was why the alleged final wish was more complicated than anyone in that room expected. Charles was not supposedly asking William to forget. He was not asking Harry to pretend nothing had happened. He was asking them to decide what would remain after all the arguments, interviews, accusations, and silence had finally faded. For the first time, William reportedly looked less like the future king and more like a son being confronted with his father's last request. Harry was facing the same dilemma from the opposite side. Anne still had more to reveal. Because according to the account, the most important part of Charles's alleged final wish had not yet been spoken. The room had gone quiet again. Anne looked at both brothers. Then she prepared to tell them the one thing Charles allegedly wanted them to understand before it was too late. And this time, the revelation was not going to concern what either brother would inherit. It was going to concern what neither brother could afford to lose. The question hung in the room, but Anne did not answer it immediately. She lowered the document in her hands and looked from William to Harry. Neither brother spoke. Whatever Charles had asked her to reveal, it was clear that she understood the danger of saying too much too quickly. Then Anne began to explain why Charles had trusted her with something so personal. It went back to the way Charles had spent his entire life watching the monarchy change around him. For decades, he had stood close enough to the crown to understand its power, but far enough away to see its weaknesses. He watched his mother carry an institution through scandals, family ruptures, public anger, and relentless scrutiny. He watched the monarchy survive moments that appeared capable of destroying it.
She hasn't, no. She's more of a soft influencing, modest kind of instruction. So it's, or guidance rather than instruction. I don't think she believes too heavily in instruction. She believes in finding your own path, but with very good examples and guidance around you to support you. And I think that's what she's found to be the most effective for herself, is the fact that she has been able to, over the...
And according to the dramatic account behind this story, Charles learned something from all of it. The crown could survive a crisis. A family divided against itself was much harder to repair. That belief allegedly became more important as Charles's own reign entered a period of uncertainty. The king had waited decades to become monarch. When that moment finally arrived, it came with an uncomfortable reality. The world around the crown had changed dramatically. The public expected transparency. The younger generation wanted a different relationship with royal duty. The family itself was no longer moving as one. William was preparing for a future that had been mapped out since childhood. Harry had moved in the opposite direction. And Charles stood between those two paths. That was the pressure Anne was now bringing into the room. The alleged final wish could not be understood simply by looking at succession. William was always going to be the next central figure in the monarchy. Harry had already stepped away from the working structure. Those facts were obvious. What was not obvious was what Charles believed should happen to the relationship between the brothers once he was gone. That was where the old history became important. Charles had witnessed how quickly royal decisions could create consequences that lasted for generations. The abdication crisis involving Edward VIII had become part of the family's permanent history. The death of George VI had unexpectedly placed Elizabeth on the throne. Elizabeth's own reign then became a lesson in duty, sacrifice, and endurance. Charles had spent his childhood watching his mother become the embodiment of stability. But he had also watched the personal cost of that stability. The crown demanded control even when private emotions were overwhelming. That lesson followed Charles into adulthood. He learned to wait. He learned to absorb criticism. He learned that personal happiness could collide violently with public expectation. And eventually, he learned that even a royal family could become trapped by its own history.
Sympathetic. Well, I mean, occasionally I bump into people in the UK or elsewhere, so I wouldn't mind your job. I'd be delighted. Try it any time they like. But like all people's jobs, you'll find that it isn't actually what it appears to be.
Yes. Is there one thing, one impression, one indelible impression over the last 12 days here that sticks in? Want to ask you now? Something stands out?
Well, one of the things I was very impressed by personally was when I met all these religions.
That history mattered because William and Harry represented two completely different responses to the same institution. William remained inside it. Harry stepped away from it. One brother accepted the burden of preparing for the crown. The other questioned whether the crown was worth the personal cost. For Charles, neither position could simply be dismissed. He was their father before he was their king. That distinction became increasingly important. Because when a monarch makes a decision about the institution, the world expects calculation. When a father makes a final request about his children, the calculation becomes emotional. And according to the account, Charles knew the difference. That was allegedly why Anne became involved. She was not being asked to settle the dispute between William and Harry. She was being asked to carry a message from one generation of the family to the next. And the message had apparently been protected for a reason. The more the public knew about the family's private conflicts, the harder reconciliation became. Every interview created another headline. Every accusation created another wound. Every public disagreement became part of the permanent record. By the time Charles allegedly began considering what he wanted to leave behind, the problem was no longer simply a disagreement between two brothers. It had become a story the entire world was watching. William could not respond like an ordinary older brother. Harry could not respond like an ordinary younger brother. Every word could become a royal controversy. Every gesture could be interpreted as surrender or rejection. And that was precisely what Charles's alleged final wish was designed to confront. If the brothers could not erase the past, perhaps they could stop allowing the past to determine everything that came next. But there was another complication. Charles allegedly did not want the future of the monarchy placed at risk simply to create the appearance of family unity. That distinction was crucial. He could not ask William to abandon his responsibilities. He could not simply restore Harry to a position he had voluntarily left. And he could not pretend that the damage between the brothers had never happened. Instead, the alleged wish appeared to occupy a much narrower and more difficult space. Family without surrender. Forgiveness without forgetting. Connection without returning to the old arrangement. That was the balance and was now expected to explain. And if that sounds like a simple compromise, it was anything but. Because William's entire future was tied to the institution. Harry's future had been built partly around escaping its pressure. Their father's final request therefore placed both men in a position neither had chosen. William would eventually inherit the crown. Harry would not. Yet Charles allegedly wanted neither son to interpret the difference as proof that one brother had been chosen over the other. That was the part that could change everything. HI viewers, if a father asked two brothers to stop fighting before it was too late, would you think they should at least try, even after everything that happened? Leave one simple word in the comments, yes or no. And if this story matters to you, share it with someone who follows the royal family, because sometimes the hardest truth is the one people keep avoiding. And continued. She reminded them, according to the account, that Charles had never viewed the future entirely through titles. He understood that William's destiny was institutional. Harry's place was personal. Those two realities could exist at the same time, but only if both brothers accepted the boundaries. For William, that meant understanding that being king would not make him immune to the responsibilities of being a brother. For Harry, it meant understanding that being Charles' their son did not automatically restore the role he had left behind. And that was the point where Anne's message became much more difficult to hear. Charles had allegedly not asked William to forget. He had not asked Harry to return. He had asked them to stop allowing their conflict to become the final definition of their family. William reportedly remained silent. Harry did too. But there was one question neither man could ignore. If Charles truly wanted them to find some form of peace, why had he chosen and to deliver the message instead of telling them himself? The answer, according to the account, was buried inside the same private conversations that had led into that room. Charles allegedly knew that speaking directly to both brothers could turn the request into another confrontation. Anne was different. She could deliver the words without choosing a side. She could tell William what his father wanted without demanding that he surrender his judgment. She could tell Harry that he was still part of the family without promising him a return to royal life. But Anne had not yet revealed the most important detail. Because hidden inside the alleged final wish was a distinction that neither brother had expected. Charles was not simply asking them to reconcile. He was allegedly asking them to decide what kind of family would remain after him. And that meant the next part of Anne's message would force William to confront something he had spent years trying to separate from his duty. His relationship with Harry. For the first time that evening, William understood that the question was no longer whether Harry belonged inside the monarchy. The real question was whether Harry still belonged beside him as a brother. And Anne was about to give him the answer his father had allegedly left behind. William did not answer. For several seconds, he simply stared at Anne. The question she had placed before him was no longer about Harry's position within the monarchy. It was about something much more uncomfortable. Could William separate the man who had hurt him from the brother his father still wanted him to recognize? Harry remained silent too. Then Anne revealed the part of Charles's alleged message that changed the entire conversation. The king had not asked William to bring Harry back into royal life. He had not asked him to restore titles, reopen palace doors, or erase the decisions that had separated the brothers. Instead, according to the account, Charles wanted William to understand one thing. Harry could be outside the institution without being outside the family. The distinction sounded simple. It was not. For William, the monarchy was not merely a family inheritance. It was an obligation that had shaped almost every part of his adult life. Every public appearance carried consequences. Every decision could affect the reputation of the crown. Every personal disagreement could become a national story. Harry lived under a completely different set of expectations. He had stepped away from working royal duties and built a separate life. The distance was no longer theoretical. It had become physical, professional, and emotional. And yet Charles allegedly believed those differences did not have to destroy the relationship between his sons. That was the part William appeared to struggle with. Because accepting the message did not mean pretending the past had never happened. It meant deciding whether the past would control the future. And reportedly made the distinction very clear. Charles understood what had happened between his sons. He knew about the resentment. He knew about the public interviews. He knew about the accusations that had circulated around the family. He knew that Harry's departure had changed the balance inside the monarchy. And he knew that William had been left with responsibilities that Harry no longer carried. The alleged final wish therefore came with no easy instruction. There was no sentence saying William should simply forgive everything. There was no demand that Harry return to the old life. There was no magical solution. Instead, Charles allegedly wanted his sons to find a way to remain brothers without forcing the monarchy to return to a structure that had already changed. That was when William reportedly asked the question that had been waiting in the room from the beginning. Why? Why should he be the one expected to make the first move? And did not immediately respond. Her silence mattered. Because there was no simple answer. William had spent years preparing for a future that Harry had chosen not to share. He had watched the institution absorb controversy while he continued moving forward. He had carried the expectation that one day every decision would become his responsibility. Harry had chosen another path. The two brothers could disagree about why that happened, but the consequences were real, and Charles' alleged request did not erase them. Anne understood that. That was why her message was reportedly so carefully delivered. She was not asking William to surrender his judgment. She was asking him to consider what his father believed would matter after the arguments were no longer fresh. A crown could pass from one generation to another. A title could be changed. A royal role could disappear. But a family relationship, once completely destroyed, could be impossible to recover. That was the fear behind the alleged wish. William finally looked toward Harry. The room had changed. Only moments earlier, Harry had been the brother standing outside the institution. Now he was the person at the center of the king's final request. Harry appeared to understand the complication immediately. If Charles had wanted him restored to royal duty, that would have been a clear demand. If Charles had wanted him completely excluded, that would have been clear too. But this was something far more difficult. Charles allegedly wanted Harry acknowledged without allowing the monarchy to become trapped by the circumstances that had caused him to leave. That meant Harry would have to accept something too. He could not use his father's wish as a shortcut back into a life that no longer belonged to him. He could not demand that William forget everything. And he could not expect a family reunion simply because Charles wanted peace. For the first time, the alleged message placed responsibility on both brothers. William had to decide whether the door between them should remain permanently closed. Harry had to decide whether he was willing to approach that door without demanding that the entire institution change for him. Then Anne revealed another detail. Charles had allegedly considered the possibility that William and Harry might never become close again. That sentence landed differently. It meant the king's final wish was not based on an unrealistic fantasy. He knew his sons. He knew the damage. He knew that some wounds could not be repaired with one conversation. So what was he actually asking for? Not necessarily friendship. Not necessarily forgiveness. Something smaller. Something more difficult. A refusal to become permanent enemies. That distinction gave the alleged final wish its real weight. Charles was not supposedly asking William to forget what happened. He was asking him not to let anger become the final inheritance he received from his father. And he was not asking Harry to erase his own experiences. He was asking him not to turn those experiences into a permanent weapon against his family. It was a dangerous balance. One wrong sentence could destroy it. One public statement could reopen everything. One accusation could send the brothers back to opposite sides. I knew that. William knew it. Harry knew it too. And that was why nobody moved. The silence became heavier. Then William finally spoke. His response, according to the dramatic account, was not an immediate promise. He did not suddenly embrace his brother. He did not announce reconciliation. Instead, he questioned whether honoring Charles's final wish required him to trust Harry again. That question exposed the real wound. Trust was not the same thing as forgiveness. Forgiveness was not the same thing as reconciliation. And reconciliation was not the same thing as restoring Harry's former position. Three separate problems had become tangled together for years. Now Anne was forcing them apart. She allegedly told William that Charles had understood this distinction. The king knew that trust could not be ordered. He knew that forgiveness could not be demanded. But he believed there was still one choice within William's control. Whether to leave a door open. That was all. Not an invitation to return. Not a promise of royal duties. Not an erasure of the past. Just a door. Harry heard the words differently. For years, he had reportedly wanted recognition that his relationship with his family existed independently of his relationship with the institution. Now Charles' alleged final wish appeared to acknowledge exactly that. But recognition came with a price. Harry would have to accept that William's future as king could not revolve around their personal conflict. The monarchy could not become an extension of their family argument. That was the boundary Charles allegedly wanted. And it was perhaps the hardest boundary for either brother to accept. Because William could not simply be Harry's older brother anymore. He was preparing to become the head of the institution that had defined their family. Harry could not simply be William's younger brother either. His choices had already created a separate identity beyond the royal household. The old relationship was gone. The question was whether something different could replace it. Then Anne reached for the document again. William watched her carefully. Harry leaned forward. Whatever had been discussed privately before this meeting, the next words appeared to concern both of them directly. Anne allegedly explained that Charles had left another instruction. This one was not about Harry returning. It was not about William forgiving him. It concerned what should happen if the brothers failed to reconcile at all. And suddenly, the room was silent again. Because the first part of Charles' alleged wish had offered them a possibility. The second part appeared to prepare for the possibility that they would reject it. That was the revelation William had not expected. His father's final request was not simply asking him to forgive his brother. It was asking him to decide what kind of future would remain if forgiveness never came. Anne did not open the document immediately. She held it against her side and looked at Harry. For the first time that evening, the attention in the room shifted completely away from William. Harry was now the one waiting for an answer. According to the dramatic account, Charles had anticipated that moment. His alleged final instruction had been written with the possibility that his sons might never fully repair their relationship. The king had apparently understood that there were wounds too deep to disappear because of a single request from a dying or aging parent. But what came next was even more personal, and told Harry that Charles had never wanted him erased from the family. The words were simple. Their meaning was not. Harry had spent years separated from the center of royal life. His public identity had changed. His responsibilities had changed. His relationship with the institution had changed. And his relationship with William had become one of the most closely watched family conflicts in the world. Yet according to the account, Charles had allegedly refused to see his younger son as someone who could simply be removed from his personal legacy. That did not mean Charles wanted everything returned to the way it had been. It meant something far more complicated. He wanted Harry to understand that leaving the institution did not necessarily mean leaving the family. Harry reportedly remained silent and continued. Charles allegedly believed that Harry had made choices that could not simply be undone. He understood that the younger prince had built a separate life and that returning to the old structure would create questions neither William nor the monarchy could easily answer. But Charles also allegedly believed that a son could leave a royal role without becoming a stranger to his own father. That distinction appeared to hit Harry harder than any discussion about titles ever could. Because if Charles' alleged final wish was accurate, then the king had not been choosing between his sons. He had been trying to separate two things that had become hopelessly tangled. The monarchy was one thing. The family was another. And Harry suddenly had to confront the possibility that his father had understood the difference all along. William was still watching him. Neither brother appeared ready to speak. Then Harry reportedly asked the question that had been sitting underneath everything. If Charles wanted peace, why had he waited until now? Why had he allowed years to pass? Why had the family been permitted to drift further apart while every new controversy made reconciliation harder? Anne's answer was quiet. Because Charles allegedly knew that timing mattered. A request made publicly could become a performance. A request made through palace officials could become a political statement. But a private request delivered through and could remain what Charles intended it to be. A family matter. That was the theory behind the account. And it explained why Anne had been chosen. She was not there to negotiate. She was not there to announce a new royal arrangement. She was there to carry words from one family member to two others. But Harry still had another problem. Even if he accepted his father's alleged wish, what exactly was he being asked to do? Return? Apologize? Reach out to William? Remain silent? Accept a permanent distance? And next revelation answered part of that. Charles allegedly did not ask Harry to return to royal duties. He did not ask him to resume the role he had left. He did not ask him to abandon the life he had created away from the palace. Instead, the alleged request was more personal. Charles wanted Harry to stop treating separation from the institution as proof that separation from the family was necessary. That meant Harry could remain outside the working monarchy while still accepting a relationship with his father and brother. But there was another side to that request. Harry would also have to accept William's position. William's future could not be negotiated through their personal relationship. The crown would not be reshaped simply because the brothers were unable to agree. Harry could not ask William to choose between being king and being his brother. That was the boundary. And it was a painful one. Because for Harry, accepting it could mean admitting that the family he wanted might never look the way it once did. No return to the old hierarchy. No simple restoration. No clean ending. Only the possibility of a relationship that existed outside the royal machine. William appeared to understand the implication, but then turned toward him. She reminded him that Charles's alleged request came with responsibility on his side as well. William would eventually carry the crown. That meant he would have greater power over the institution than Harry ever would. But according to the account, Charles did not want that power to become personal punishment. He did not want William to use the monarchy as a weapon in a family dispute. That sentence reportedly changed William's expression, because it placed a boundary around his future authority. He could protect the institution. He could define its working structure. He could make decisions about royal responsibilities. But Charles allegedly wanted him to understand that Harry's place in the family could not simply be determined by anger. William did not respond immediately. The room remained painfully quiet. The brothers were now facing the same message from opposite directions. Harry had to accept that family did not guarantee a return to royal life. William had to accept that royal authority did not justify permanently destroying a family bond. And stood between them with the alleged final words of their father. That was the moment the story took another turn. Because according to the account, and then revealed something William had not known. The message Charles had given her was not simply about reconciliation. There had allegedly been a second concern. Charles wanted to prevent his sons from turning his death into another battlefield. The possibility was terrifying. If Charles died while the relationship between William and Harry remained unresolved, every future decision could become a new source of conflict. One brother could interpret a decision as rejection. The other could interpret it as punishment. The public could interpret every silence, appearance, or absence as evidence of another royal feud. Charles allegedly wanted to prevent that cycle. And that was why the final wish carried consequences beyond the two brothers. It was about what the next generation would inherit emotionally. William's children would grow up knowing their uncle. Harry's children would grow up knowing their royal relatives from a different position. The family could either preserve some connection across those boundaries or allow the division to harden into something permanent. And reportedly understood exactly what was at stake. But she also knew that Charles could not force either brother to forgive. No monarch could command that. No document could guarantee it. No royal ceremony could manufacture trust. The choice still belonged to William and Harry. Then Harry looked toward William. For years, the two brothers had occupied different sides of the same argument. Now they were being asked to consider something neither side could control. Their father's legacy. Harry reportedly wanted to know whether William intended to honor the request. William did not give him the answer he wanted. Instead, he made the distinction that would define everything that followed. Honoring their father did not mean pretending the past had never happened. That answer was crucial. It meant William was not rejecting Charles's alleged wish, but he was not surrendering his own judgment either. Harry heard the message, and for a brief moment, the confrontation appeared to soften. Not disappear, not resolve, just soften. That small change was perhaps the most significant development of the entire meeting, because reconciliation does not always begin with an embrace. Sometimes it begins when two people stop preparing their next defense. And according to the account, that was what happened next. And finally placed the document on the table. She had one final portion to read. This part, she allegedly explained, was written for a situation Charles hoped would never happen. A future in which William and Harry remained divided. The room became silent again. William looked down. Harry leaned closer and began reading. And the words reportedly made one thing unmistakably clear. Charles's alleged final wish was not simply asking his sons to reconcile while he was alive. He was asking them to decide what they would do with their relationship after he was gone. Because once Charles was no longer there to mediate between them, there would be no father left to call them into the same room. No final conversation waiting to happen. No third voice capable of reminding them that beneath the titles, beneath the controversies, beneath every disagreement, they were still brothers. And that was the part of the message that reportedly left Harry stunned. Charles had allegedly understood that his own absence could make the divide permanent. He had therefore left the decision with them. Not with the palace. Not with advisors. Not with the public. With William and Harry. But there was one final detail and had not yet explained. The alleged instruction contained a condition. If the brothers could not reconcile, Charles wanted one thing preserved above everything else. And when and finally revealed what that was, even William reportedly struggled to hide his reaction. And finally read the last part. For several seconds, neither brother moved. Then the meaning of Charles's alleged instruction became clear. If William and Harry could not repair their relationship, Charles wanted one thing protected above everything else. The family should not be turned into a battlefield for the next generation. That was the final boundary. Not a demand for public reconciliation. Not a royal reunion staged for cameras. Not an order for Harry to return to working life. And not a command for William to forget everything that had happened. Charles's alleged wish was much narrower and perhaps much harder. Whatever happened between his sons, the children of the next generation should not inherit the conflict. That revelation reportedly stunned William because it changed the entire meaning of the conversation. He had been thinking about Harry. Charles had allegedly been thinking beyond both of them. Beyond the arguments. Beyond the headlines. Beyond the monarchy's immediate future. He was thinking about what remained after the brothers were gone. And Harry appeared to understand the same thing. The feud between two brothers could eventually become a family tradition if nobody stopped it. One generation could teach the next generation who to distrust. One argument could become another. One unanswered accusation could become another inherited wound. That, according to the account, was what Charles allegedly wanted to prevent. Aunt's role suddenly made sense. She had not been sent into that room to choose a winner. She had been sent there to deliver a boundary. William could remain the future king. Harry could remain outside the working monarchy. Their lives could continue in completely different directions. But neither brother was supposed to make the other brother's children pay for the conflict. That was the final wish. And it was devastating precisely because it offered no easy ending. There was no guarantee that William and Harry would become close again. There was no promise that old grievances would disappear. There was no magical sentence capable of restoring the relationship they once had. Charles's alleged request simply left them with a choice. What would they do with the damage? Would they carry it forward? Or would they allow the next generation to live beyond it? William reportedly remained quiet for a long moment. The responsibility was enormous. As the future king, he could not allow personal feelings to dictate the direction of the monarchy. But as a son, he could not ignore the final request of his father. That was the conflict Anne had brought into the room. William did not have to declare that Harry was forgiven. He did not have to pretend trust had returned. He did not have to forget every painful moment. He simply had to decide whether the door between them should remain permanently locked. And Harry faced the opposite responsibility. He could not demand that William abandon his position. He could not use Charles's alleged wish as leverage. He could not expect the past to disappear because his father wanted peace. If there was going to be any future relationship between the brothers, it would require restraint from both sides. That realization changed the atmosphere. The anger had not vanished. The wounds had not vanished. But something else had appeared. Possibility. A small one. A fragile one. But real enough to matter. And had delivered the message. Now she stepped back. The decision belonged to the brothers. That was perhaps the most powerful part of the entire account. Princess Anne could reveal the king's alleged final wish. She could explain why Charles had trusted her. She could tell William what his father wanted. She could tell Harry what his father feared. But she could not make either man obey. That was where royal authority ended. And personal choice began. William looked toward Harry. The moment did not produce the dramatic reconciliation that the public might expect from a royal story. There was no sudden embrace. No emotional speech. No declaration that everything was forgiven. Instead, there was something quieter. William reportedly understood that honoring his father's wish did not require him to erase his own experience. Harry reportedly understood that being recognized as family did not mean returning to a role he had already left. For the first time, the two positions could exist without completely destroying each other. That was the possibility Charles had allegedly been trying to preserve. And it made the original revelation far more significant. The final wish was never really about choosing William over Harry. It was never simply about restoring Harry. It was never about inheritance. It was about preventing a broken relationship from becoming a permanent family legacy. That was the hidden meaning behind Anne's revelation. And it left William with a decision that could eventually define more than his relationship with his brother. When William becomes king, his authority will be measured publicly through decisions affecting the monarchy. But privately, his character may be judged by how he handles the people closest to him. Harry faces the same test from the opposite direction. He cannot demand reconciliation. He can only decide whether he is willing to participate in it. That is why the alleged final wish remains so emotionally complicated. Charles could ask for peace, and could deliver the request. William could leave the door open. Harry could choose whether to walk toward it. But nobody could guarantee what happened next. And perhaps that was the point. A father can leave instructions. A king can leave a legacy. But neither can command two wounded brothers to forgive one another. That choice belongs to them. The account ends with that unresolved tension. William still has his responsibilities. Harry still has his separate life. The monarchy still has its future. And somewhere between those realities sits the relationship Charles allegedly feared losing completely. His two sons. For years, the world has watched William and Harry through headlines, photographs, interviews, ceremonies, and moments of silence. But if the account surrounding Anne's revelation is taken at face value, the most important part was never what happened in front of the cameras. It was what Charles allegedly wanted to happen when there were no cameras left. He wanted the crown to move forward without turning the family into enemies. He wanted William to protect the institution without using it to settle personal wounds. He wanted Harry to remain part of the family without demanding that the institution return to the past. And above all, he allegedly wanted the next generation to inherit something better than the conflict they had inherited. That is why Anne's role matters so much in this story. She did not soften the message. She did not make it comfortable. She simply delivered it. And once the words were spoken, the decision could no longer belong to Charles. It belonged to William and Harry. HI viewers, if Charles' alleged final wish really was about protecting the family from another generation of division, then this is the moment that deserves to be remembered. If the story made you see the William and Harry conflict differently, subscribe, like this video, and share it. Staying silent allows the same old story to keep repeating, but speaking about the issue keeps the question alive. Because the question is no longer whether William and Harry can return to the past. They cannot. The past has already happened. The real question is whether they can build something different from it. William may never completely forget. Harry may never completely agree. Their relationship may never look the way it did when they were younger. But perhaps Charles' alleged final wish was never asking for that. Perhaps he was asking for something much simpler. A future where disagreement did not become hatred. A future where distance did not become permanent exile. A future where the children of two brothers did not have to inherit the bitterness of their fathers. And if that was truly what Princess Anne was asked to reveal, then the most powerful part of the king's final wish was not what it demanded from William. It was what it demanded from both brothers. The courage to stop the conflict from becoming their legacy. And had delivered the message. The rest was no longer in her hands. It was no longer in Charles's hands. It was not even in the palace's hands. It belonged to William. It belonged to Harry. And perhaps that is why the silence after Anne finished speaking mattered more than anything she had said. Because for the first time, there was no royal protocol left to hide behind. Only two brothers. One father's final request. And a choice that could determine whether an old family wound finally ended with them, or continued into the generation that followed. If you believe a father's final request deserves at least one honest attempt, leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to follow the next chapter of this royal story, subscribe now, because the real question is no longer what Charles wanted. It is what William and Harry will choose to do with it.